They always said Earth was a backwater, a quaint little mud ball clinging to the edge of a minor spiral arm, filled with noisy creatures who thought too highly of themselves. They weren't entirely wrong. I'm Kai Anders, former combat negotiator, current galactic embarrassment, and, as of about 20 hours ago, the man apparently responsible for keeping humanity alive. I didn't ask for this. I was stationed on Threxus Prime, a diplomatic station orbiting the neutral planet of Jinzhar 4. It wasn't glamorous, gray halls, recycled air, a rotating shift between bland protein bricks and scent coffee sludge, but it was better than the war fronts, or Earth. Last I heard, half the population was glued to entertainment spheres, while the other half debated taxes for interplanetary trade lanes. The usual. Then the Sithri called for a formal audience. That was how it started. The Sithri aren't like us. They're not like anyone. Picture 10 feet of armored obsidian, all spikes and jagged muscle, with minds like perfect logic processors wrapped in hate. They've consumed 100 worlds, maybe more. Their empire stretches across 3 arms of the galaxy, each conquest neatly filed away into what they call the Silent Order. When they speak, it's not with mouths, it's with minds. Direct neural compression. Cold, clinical, terrifying. And today, they wanted to speak with me. The envoy chamber was wide, sterile, and quiet as death. One wall was made entirely of translucent alloy, showing the endless tapestry of stars beyond. Floating in front of that starlight was their representative, Archthrex, or Speaker of the Sithri Dominion. He didn't greet me. Not that I expected pleasantries. Kai Anders, human representative. His words hit like needles threading into my skull. You have no right to speak, but protocol requires it. So speak. Right. Hello to you too, I said, adjusting my collar. The pressure of his presence made my skin itch, like standing too close to a plasma coil. Let's get to the point. We're Speaker. You called this meeting. I'm here. What's your threat this time? Threx's gaze didn't shift, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. You were warned. Your species was granted observer status. You were told, expand no further. Your vessels now mine helix dust. You terraform minor moons. You show ambition. I didn't respond immediately. The helix dust fields weren't even Sithri-claimed territory. They were dead zones, resource-rich and unclaimed, or so the Galactic Council had ruled. We'd followed the letter of the law. As usual, that wasn't enough. You're mad because we're surviving, I said. Not conquering, not threatening, just surviving. You defy the order by existing. I should have walked out then. Told them we weren't going to grovel. Maybe I still believed diplomacy could hold. Maybe I was just afraid. What came next wasn't a declaration. It was a demonstration. Threx raised a black obsidian claw and twitched it forward. The chamber shimmered. A holographic projection filled the space between us, Earth. Then it burned. The image showed orbital bombardments lighting the skies of New London, energy beams scything through ocean fleets. No warning, no hesitation. I watched, frozen, as a beam cracked the crust of the African continent like a rotten egg. It wasn't just a threat, it was live. We had no declaration of hostility, I began, but Threx cut me off with a wave. Observe the consequence. Your species has committed the sin of growth. We deliver balance. Surrender, and extinction will be swift. Resist, and we will make it slow. I should have panicked, should have screamed, but instead, I just stared. My heart felt frozen in my chest. Earth, my family, my people, gone, or at least, they would be, unless I did something. Let me return to Earth, I said. Give us a chance to respond. Threx turned his head slightly. You will return, Kai Anders, but not as a savior, as a message. And just like that, everything exploded. I only caught glimpses, the warform behind me activating, my security escort atomized in a red flash, the flash of my emergency implant kicking in. My vision turned to a blur of static, heat, and nausea before I slammed into a cold metal floor. Escape pod. Emergency protocol. Some buried part of my brain still functioned. A message blared. Pod launching to secure zone. Re-entry in 33 seconds. I passed out halfway through the fall. I came to inside a bunker on a mining moon near Tau Ceti. The Medrone was stitching a plasma burn on my shoulder while 3 officers argued over my limp body. He shouldn't have gone in alone. We didn't authorize direct confrontation. He's awake. I sat up with a grunt. Where's Earth? Silence. Then Captain Valisa, commander of the Resistance Fleet, met my gaze. Hit hard. Coordinated strikes. They're wiping orbital infrastructure and deep cities. We've lost contact with 7 major settlements. But Earth isn't gone. Not yet. Relief and rage warred inside me. We need to rally the colonies, mobilize the fleet, evacuate civilians from it. You're not in charge, Anders, Valisa snapped. You're a damn envoy. You were supposed to talk, not provoke an extinction-level event. I didn't provoke them. I snapped back. They never intended to negotiate. This was always going to happen. I just confirmed it. She didn't reply. No one did. So I stood up, pain radiating from every joint. We need a plan. The Cytheri are strong, yes, but they're not gods. They think we're weak because we're disorganized. They think we'll beg or break, and won't we? Someone asked, a lieutenant with tired eyes. No, I said, because they don't understand what it means to be human. We don't bend the knee. We adapt. We fight dirty. We find cracks, weaknesses, pressure points, and we exploit them. Valisa studied me, wary. And you think you can lead that? No, I admitted, but I know the Cytheri. I've seen their arrogance up close, and I've seen what we can do when we have no other choice. We survived Earth's wars. We crossed space with nothing but scrap and dreams. We've built cities and storms and domes on ice moons. I looked around. Now we build resistance. We make them bleed for every inch they take. We remind the galaxy what humans really are. The room was quiet again, but not with disbelief, with something else, hope. Later that night, I sat alone outside the bunker, staring up at the alien sky. The stars looked colder out here, distant, impersonal. I thought about my sister, working in a geothermal facility in the Himalayas. About my father's last message, a blurry holovid of him gardening in the new Yukon colonies. I thought about all the people I couldn't reach, couldn't save. Yet, behind me, the command center hummed with new urgency. Evacuation routes were being plotted, signals sent to fringe worlds. Secret human outposts were emerging from silence. Some of them thought lost. The human race was waking up. We'd been the galaxy's underdogs for centuries. Now they'd see what that really meant. We always believed that diplomacy was our strength. Words over weapons, treaties over total war. That's what the Galactic Council told us. Anyway, I believed it too, until I watched Earth burn. The Cytheri's message was clear. They weren't here to talk. They weren't here to coexist. They were here to erase. I left the Tau Ceti mining colony at dawn, or what passed for dawn on a moon orbiting a dead gas giant. The sky was a dark gray blur, interrupted by streaks of light from the passing resistance ships. What remained of humanity's fleet was gathering at Port Erebus, a mobile station floating in the gravity tide between two collapsing stars, a place nobody sane would visit, which was exactly why it was the safest place left. My ship was a reconfigured mining barge with a prototype drive core strapped to its back, ugly, loud, and prone to engine failure. But it moved fast enough. As we coasted through the jump gate into Erebus's orbit, I finally saw just how desperate things were. Hundreds of ships, some military, most civilian, crowded the sector. Freighters retrofitted with rail cannons. Science vessels stripped down to their hulls and armored with repurposed heat shielding. We were turning scrap into survival. Valisa met me on the main observation deck. She was in full combat armor now, jet black, with the old Earth emblem scratched into one shoulder. Her expression was colder than vacuum. You're late, she said. I had to avoid 3 Cytheri hunter probes on the way. I replied, sorry for not dying. Don't get smart with me, Anders. This isn't the diplomatic lounge anymore. This is a war zone. She walked me through the command deck, where holograms of star systems hovered above stressed-out officers. I saw the damage reports from Mars, Europa, and even Titan Station. Entire settlements gone. They're hitting infrastructure, she said. Relays, farms, shield arrays, power generators. They want us blind and starving. Not dead. Not yet. Why not? I asked. Because they want to make an example out of us. She tapped the screen, zooming in on Earth's orbit. They've stationed a dreadnought over the Atlantic. Just one. They could have leveled the whole planet already. Instead, they're waiting, watching, recording, broadcasting our extinction to the rest of the galaxy. Valisa nodded grimly. Every colony that resists will be torched. Every fleet we launch will be intercepted. They want us to fight, because they know we'll lose. I turned toward the strategic map, searching for something. Anything. We can't match them ship for ship, I said. But what about jump points? If we bait them. We've already tried, she said. The Orion Crescent outpost sent a strike team through the Vega corridor. They were vaporized on arrival. Then we hit them where they don't expect. Disruption tactics. Smugglers. Pirate clans. Anders. Valise's voice hardened. This is not a war we can win. Not conventionally. We're talking about a species that's had star travel since our ancestors were learning fire. They've annihilated empires larger than our entire species. I took a breath. Then we don't fight conventionally. She arched a brow. Go on. We stop trying to be like the rest of the galaxy. We stop playing by their rules. The Sithri value control, precision, order. Let's give them chaos. Chaos isn't a strategy. It is, I said. When you're outgunned and backed into a corner, you make them bleed from 1,000 cuts, strike their supply chains, crash their navigation systems, feed them bad data, make them question every move. Valisa crossed her arms. That'll buy us time, but not victory. Then we use that time to prepare the real blow, something they won't see coming. She studied me for a moment. And what would that be? I hesitated. I hadn't told anyone yet, not even her. But deep inside the diplomatic archives on Threxus Prime, before everything went to hell, I'd uncovered something. A secret, a weapon. I need access to the vaults in the Vega archive, I said. There's something buried there. Old Terran tech. Something we never told the council about. She looked suspicious. What kind of tech? I don't know. But it was blacklisted by the First Expansion Directorate, codenamed Forgeborn. Locked away 2 centuries ago after a failed AI protocol nearly wiped out a Martian colony. The data suggests it's more than just software. It's biological, adaptive. Valisa frowned. You're talking about the myth of the neuroframe. That project was scrapped. No, it was buried. She paced for a moment, chewing her lip. Even if it's real, getting to Vega means cutting through occupied systems. We'd need stealth ships, codes, contacts. I'll take care of that, I said. Just give me a ship. She hesitated again, then nodded once. You'll get the Raven's Wake. She's fast, built for infiltration. But Kai, if you screw this up, we're out of time, out of options, and out of hope. I looked her dead in the eye. Then I won't screw it up. The Raven's Wake was a beauty, small, black, and quiet as a whisper in a vacuum. I met my pilot, a wiry ex-smuggler named Roan, who only said 3 words when I came aboard. Buckle in. Don't puke. We slipped through the Erebus Veil at light minimum velocity, cutting through 3 backdoor corridors only known to the Resistance. The journey took 16 hours, during which I barely slept. I read the old files on Forgeborn, what little was left. A series of experimental suits built from biomechanical alloys designed to bond with human neurology. Self-healing, self-optimizing, neuroreactive combat exosuits. One prototype vanished before testing. The others were dismantled, or so the records claimed. I remembered what Threx said. You will return, Kai Anders. But not as a savior, as a message. Well, I had a message of my own. Vega Archive was buried under the crust of Vega 2b, a barren rock long since deemed obsolete by galactic cartographers. But the First Directorate had encrypted the location under a false mining registry. I had the access codes. Barely. We landed under full stealth. No lights, no radio pings. Just Roan muttering curses under his breath as we burned through the last layer of bedrock with an improvised plasma drill. The vault was sealed behind 15 meters of alloy plating. I keyed in the ancient override. The door hissed open with a slow, shuddering moan, like something had been waiting to wake up. Inside, we found it. A single pod, 8 feet tall, covered in frost. No labels, just a symbol I hadn't seen since childhood. The broken earth sigil of the old Terran Defense Alliance. Roan approached it cautiously. What is it? I stepped forward, heart pounding. Our answer. I pressed my hand to the interface. The pod glowed red, then green, then opened. Inside was a humanoid frame, sleek, dark, and terrifyingly organic. Not armor, not quite. It looked alive, like it had been sleeping. Lines of gold circuitry pulsed across the surface like veins. I could feel it watching me, not with eyes, with presence. A voice, not Roan's, not mine, whispered in my mind. Welcome, Kai Anders. Neural pattern recognized. Bonding initiated. My vision blurred. Pain, light, noise, then silence. I woke up outside the vault. Roan standing over me. You were out for 2 hours. The suit was gone from the pod, because it was on me. Sleek, weightless, like a second skin. But beneath it, I felt power, awareness, the kind of control that made my bones hum. The AI's voice returned, clearer now. Designation confirmed. Forgeborn Unit 0. Combat interface calibrated. Begin integration protocol. Roan whistled low. You sure this thing won't eat your brain? No, I said. But if it does, at least I'll die doing something useful. We left Vega with no incident. The Sithri hadn't found the archive. Not yet, but the war had spread. Even from orbit, I could see flames on nearby moons. Cities turned to slag. We had maybe days before Erebus was found. I sent one message on the secure resistance channel. Forgeborn active. Returning to base. Ready to make them bleed. Back at Port Erebus, Valisa met me in the hangar. Her eyes widened when she saw the suit. You found it? No, I said. It found me. She stepped back as I walked past her, the deck crew staring in stunned silence. And I realized something. The Sithri had tried to kill a diplomat, but now they'd awakened something else. Not a soldier, a weapon. The moment I slipped into the Forgeborn suit, I knew things would never be the same. It was like waking up in a new body, one forged from flesh and machine, intelligence and instinct. I wasn't just Kai Anders anymore. I was something else, something more. I stood in the docking bay of Port Erebus, the black suit shimmering faintly under the harsh lights, and felt the weight of every eye in the room. Soldiers, scientists, commanders, all of them staring, whispering, some wide-eyed, some fearful. Valisa was there too, arms crossed, expression unreadable. But I saw it, hope, and something else, maybe fear. Show me, she said quietly. I nodded and stepped forward. The suit responded instantly, molding itself to my every contour, syncing with my nervous system. My heartbeat slowed as the interface stabilized, and then power. I could feel the suit systems running diagnostics in my mind, neural feedback loops adjusting to my thought patterns. The interface was seamless. The Forgeborn suit wasn't just armor. It was an extension of my own body and mind. Can you hear it? I asked. Who? Valisa replied. The AI. It's alive. It talks to me. Great. Now you have a ghost in your head, she muttered. Then, more seriously, this is more than just a weapon, isn't it? It's us. The next step. The war against the Sithri was no longer a battle of fleets and firepower. It had become a war of survival. Every day, the news brought more devastation. Colonies reduced to ash, fleets annihilated, families lost in the cold void of space. The Galactic Council had issued a call for unity, but most of their fleets were scattered, shattered, or retreating. What was left of Earth's forces relied on desperation and guerrilla tactics. And now, here I was, the last hope, or the last mistake. The first test of the Forgeborn suit came faster than I expected. A distress signal from a civilian transport caught my attention. The Starling was under attack near the Epsilon Eridani jump point. The Sithri had deployed a hunter squadron, sleek black ships with precision weaponry designed for quick strikes. Roan, I said, set course for Epsilon Eridani. We're going in. His grin was grim. You sure about this? I nodded. I have to try. The Raven's wake accelerated through the jump gate, slipping into the system faster than any ship should have been able to. The Forgeborn suit interfaced with the ship's systems, enhancing my reflexes and awareness. I could feel every vibration of the hull, every blip on the radar, as if they were extensions of my own senses. As we neared the transport, the situation grew dire. For Sithri fighters swarmed the Starling, their plasma cannons tearing into the hull. The civilians inside were trapped. No shields, no weapons, just terrified people hoping for a miracle. I stepped into the airlock, and the suit sealed automatically. My HUD lit up, displaying tactical data, enemy positions, and structural weaknesses in real time. I felt the rush, the surge of adrenaline, amplified by the neural link. This was no longer a mission. It was a fight for every soul aboard that ship. I moved through the corridors like a shadow, faster and stronger than any human could be. The suit enhanced my strength, enabling me to rip through bulkhead doors and disable enemy systems with a thought. The Sithri soldiers were lethal, but unprepared for what I was. I caught them off guard with a series of rapid strikes, the Forgeborn suit augmenting my speed and precision. Every movement was calculated, every strike deadly. I was a blur, but the real test came when I reached the transport's command center. There, the Sithri had deployed a neural inhibitor, a device designed to disrupt neural implants and override human control. I felt it start to interfere with my connection to the suit. The HUD flickered. Pain surged through my head. I clenched my jaw, focusing on the AI's voice in my mind. Override protocol activated, initiating countermeasures. Slowly, the neural inhibitor's effects receded. The suit adapted, rerouting control signals and isolating the interference. I punched through the control console, ripping the device free. With the inhibitor destroyed, I rallied the surviving crew. Follow me, I ordered. my voice calm but commanding. We made our way to the escape pods, but the Scythery fighters were closing in fast. Roan fired the Raven's Wake's disruptor beams, giving us a narrow window. I helped the civilians board the pods, sealing the hatch behind them. Go, I shouted. As the last pod launched, a fighter broke through the shields, firing a plasma blast directly at us. The suit flared, absorbing the energy. I braced for impact. When the light faded, I was still standing. The Scythery ship retreated, damaged but not destroyed. Roan's voice crackled over comms. That was insane. You're insane. I managed a tired laugh. Maybe, but we bought them time. Back at Port Erebus, the news of the rescue spread quickly. For the first time in weeks, the Resistance had a victory to rally behind. Valisa met me again, her expression softer this time. You're more than a weapon now, she said. You're a symbol. I looked down at the suit, feeling its hum against my skin. Maybe, but even as hope flickered, I knew this was only the beginning. The Scythery wouldn't stop. They were watching, waiting, and soon, they would come for me. After the rescue mission, Port Erebus felt different, charged with energy. But beneath that, a restless tension. It wasn't just the victory or the hope sparking in the Resistance's veins. It was me, or more specifically, what I represented, a human weapon forged from ancient tech and modern desperation. I didn't sleep that night, or if I did, it was haunted by fragments, flashes of memories, images that weren't mine but felt unbearably real. The Forgeborn suit wasn't just a tool. It was a relic of something older, something deeper than the war against the Scythery. It was as if it held the ghosts of those who came before me, whispered secrets buried in its alloy and circuitry. I needed answers. The next morning, I sought out Dr. Lasara, the chief scientist behind the Forgeborn project. She was a woman shaped by years of isolation and obsession, her sharp eyes scanning me with a mix of curiosity and caution. You're awake, she said, voice clipped but not unkind. I need to know, I said. Where did this suit come from? Why me? She hesitated, then gestured for me to follow her to a lab cluttered with data terminals and holographic displays. She tapped a sequence on one terminal, and a star map flared to life. This is where it started, she explained. Eos Prime, a lost colony on the edge of explored space. It was the cradle of a civilization we barely understand. The Forgeborn. Forgeborn. I echoed, eyeing the location. They were ancient, long before humanity ventured this far. Their technology was so advanced it bordered on magic, bioengineering, AI symbiosis, neural interfacing. They built these suits as living armor, capable of bonding with their wearers and amplifying their abilities. I frowned. Why is this tech in a colonial war zone now? And why me? Lasara's eyes darkened. Because the Forgeborn weren't destroyed by time or war. They were hidden, and someone brought the suit here. Someone who believed humanity was ready to wield their power again. Her words hit me like a shockwave. Was I a weapon or a herald of something else? And who had pulled me into this web? Before I could press further, the lab's alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Lasara cursed and grabbed a data pad. Security breach, she said. They're inside. We moved fast, navigating narrow corridors to the secure vault where the Forgeborn suits were stored. I could feel the suits hum matching my heartbeat. Tense, alert. Outside, the echoes of footsteps and low voices filled the hallways. Enemies? I asked. Worse, Lasara whispered. Rogue agents. Mercenaries hired to steal the Forgeborn tech. We reached the vault door. Lasara's fingers flew over the keypad, unlocking the heavy blast shield just as a group of armed men rounded the corner. Go, she shouted. I surged forward, powered by the suit and adrenaline. The mercenaries opened fire, plasma bolts sizzling against the armor. I dodged and retaliated, using the suit's enhanced strength to slam one into the wall. The fight was brutal and chaotic, but for all their firepower and aggression, the mercenaries weren't prepared for me. I was fast, I was strong, and the suit was more than just protection. It was a weapon, a symphony of deadly precision. When the last attacker fell, I scanned the area. Lasara was unharmed but shaken. They'll be back, she said. And they know you're the key. I nodded, breathing heavily. Then we need to find out who's behind this. And fast. The days that followed were a blur of investigation, training, and uneasy alliances. Valisa and I pored over data, piecing together fragments of intel. The mercenaries were linked to a shadowy faction known only as the Eclipse, a group rumored to manipulate galactic conflicts for profit and power. They wanted the Forgeborn technology to tip the scales in their favor. And they weren't the only ones. One night, as I sat alone in my quarters, the suit's AI flickered with a new message. Warning. Unknown signal detected. Attempting decryption. The voice was different now. Less robotic. More familiar. Almost like a whisper from the past. Show me, I said, focusing. A flood of images poured into my mind. Ancient battles, lost worlds, faces of Forgeborn warriors long dead, and a message cryptic but clear. The light will guide the lost. The shadow will consume the blind. I shivered. The Forgeborn suit wasn't just a weapon. It was a legacy, and its power came with a price. I stood on the observation deck, staring at the stars. Somewhere out there was Eos Prime, the birthplace of the Forgeborn. Somewhere out there were answers and dangers. The war with the Scythery was just the beginning. The real battle was for the soul of humanity itself. When the Raven's Wake dropped out of hyperspace near the coordinates Lasara had pinpointed, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread settle deep in my gut. We were heading toward Eos Prime, the lost colony, the birthplace of the Forgeborn technology, and the place where my own journey had, in a way, begun long before I even put on the suit. But there was more than just history waiting for me on Eos Prime. There was truth, and sometimes, truth is a heavy burden. The planet hung before us like a gem dusted with twilight, an azure orb swirling with dense clouds and vast continents. It was beautiful, almost untouched, yet beneath the serenity, something old and dangerous lurked. Eos Prime was supposed to be abandoned centuries ago, Lasara said as we prepared to land. Her fingers trembled slightly as she calibrated the ship's sensors. Why come back now? I asked, tightening the straps of my Forgeborn suit. The neural link was already humming, syncing with my senses. Because someone wants that power back, she replied grimly. And they're not the only ones. The shuttle descended through thick clouds, touching down in the ruins of an ancient city swallowed by overgrowth and silence. The streets were cracked and overrun with alien flora, the architecture a haunting blend of organic curves and metallic precision. Everything whispered of a civilization that had mastered both biology and machine. I stepped out first, my boots crunching over debris, the Forgeborn suit sensors scanning the area. The neural interface buzzed softly with static echoes, faint signals buried in the planet's electromagnetic field. It's like the planet itself is alive, I muttered. Lasara nodded. Eos Prime isn't just a home. It's a vault, and it's watching. As we moved deeper into the ruins, the silence broke suddenly. A voice, soft, distant, and unmistakably human, echoed through the remains. Kai. My heart slammed in my chest. It was my name, spoken by someone or something here. Who's there? I called out, raising my hand instinctively. The suit responded, flexing with energy ready to defend or strike. The voice answered again. You carry the legacy, but do you understand it? Before I could respond, the ground trembled beneath us. Lasara grabbed my arm as ancient machines stirred to life, relics of Forgeborn defense systems activating after centuries of dormancy. We dashed for cover as automated sentries, skeletal constructs of metal and energy, emerged from the shadows. The fight was brutal. These were no ordinary drones. They adapted to our moves, coordinating with uncanny intelligence. I felt the Forgeborn suit's AI interface itself deeper into the planetary network, trying to override the systems, but the planet resisted, its defenses ancient and fierce. I realized then, Eos Prime was a fortress, a guardian, and a warning. After hours of combat, we reached a central chamber where the atmosphere shifted. A colossal holographic map floated before us, pulsating with data streams and star charts. This is their archive, Lasara breathed, awestruck. The Forgeborn kept their knowledge here, technology, history, even consciousness. A sudden pulse surged through the suit. The AI's voice softened, almost reverent. Accessing legacy consciousness, preparing to merge. I gritted my teeth, resisting the flood of memories that threatened to overwhelm me. Visions flooded my mind. Forgeborn warriors standing defiant against cosmic horrors, their spirits bound to the suits to live beyond death. Their sacrifices, their hopes for a future free of tyranny. I saw flashes of a great betrayal, a shadowy faction within the Forgeborn who sought to control the power for themselves, triggering a civil war that nearly destroyed their civilization. Their final act was to hide their legacy away, encoding it in a neural engram designed to bond with a worthy bearer, someone human, strong enough to wield their power without falling prey to corruption. And now, that someone was me. Lasara's voice cut through the visions. Kai, the Forgeborn legacy isn't just technology. It's a test and a burden. I staggered, struggling to ground myself. What happens if I fail? Then the darkness consumes everything, she said quietly. We had no time to linger. Outside, more sentries were activating, their patrols relentless. As we fled the chamber, I felt the Forgeborn AI awaken fully within me, its consciousness blending with mine, ancient and wise yet burdened with sorrow. It spoke softly in my mind. Kai, you are the last hope. The Forgeborn must rise again, not as conquerors, but as protectors. I swallowed hard. Protectors, not weapons. That was the line I had to walk. Our return to the Raven's Wake was tense. I was different now. The suit pulsed with a new energy, and I carried a new weight, knowledge and power that could change the fate of the galaxy. But it also painted a target on my back. The Eclipse and other shadow factions would stop at nothing to seize the Forgeborn technology for their own ends. And worse, the Sithari might have sensed the awakening. That night, alone in my quarters, I stared at the stars through the viewport. The legacy of Eos Prime was no longer buried beneath the ruins. It was alive, and it was calling me forward into a war bigger than any I had ever imagined. When we left Eos Prime behind, the weight of its revelations pressed down on me like a gravestone. I had glimpsed a future written in both light and shadow, a legacy meant to protect, yet so easily twisted into a weapon of domination. The Raven's Wake hummed softly as we cruised through the dark stretch of space back toward Port Erebus. I sat alone in the command deck, fingers tightening around the armrest, mind racing through everything Lasara had shown me. The Forgeborn were not just ancient warriors or mythic legends. They were an entire civilization built on a fragile balance of power and sacrifice. And now, the echoes of their past were alive in me. Kai, Valise's voice pulled me back from the edge of my thoughts. She stepped into the command deck, her expression hard but concerned. We need to talk. The eclipse is moving faster than we anticipated. I nodded without looking up. I know. She sighed and took a seat opposite me. They're forming alliances, mercenaries, disgruntled factions, even some corporate interests who see the Forgeborn tech as a way to monopolize power. The galaxy was a fractured chessboard, and everyone was jockeying for position. Our resistance network was small but determined. The war with the Sithari had left many systems battered and vulnerable, and Port Erebus was one of the last free strongholds in this sector. But now, with the Forgeborn legacy resurfacing, the stakes had changed. It wasn't just survival anymore. It was about control over a technology that could reshape the entire balance of power. We can't fight this alone, I said, voice low. We need allies. Valise's eyes flickered with skepticism. Trust is scarce these days, especially when everyone has their own agendas. That's when Lasara arrived with the latest intel. Encrypted communications intercepted from a faction called the Starborn Covenant. They were rumored to be descendants of an ancient human colony who rejected the Forgeborn legacy, fearing its corrupting influence. But desperation had a way of bending ideals. The Covenant had contacted us, offering an alliance, but with conditions. I stared at the hollow screen projecting the Covenant's envoy, a stern woman named Mara Rel. Her gaze was sharp, her tone icy. We will not hand over our secrets or sovereignty lightly, Mara declared. But the Sithari and the Eclipse threaten all of us. The Covenant believes your Forgeborn power can turn the tide. It was an uneasy truce. The Starborn Covenant was as proud and insular as they were powerful. Accepting their help meant inviting old grudges and new risks. But with enemies closing in, options were limited. The first meeting between our resistance leaders and the Covenant envoys was tense, held in the cavernous chambers of Port Erebus's underground base. The air was thick with suspicion and unspoken threats. Mara stood before us like a statue carved from ice, her voice cutting through the silence. We know of the Forgeborn's potential and their peril. We seek to contain it, not exploit it. I stepped forward. And how do you propose we do that? She fixed me with a look that was both challenge and warning. By uniting our knowledge and strength. But make no mistake, if you stray from that path, the Covenant will act. The tension was palpable, but there was no room for division. Our survival depended on this fragile alliance. Over the next days, I trained with the Covenant warriors, learning their techniques and sharing insights from the Forge-born suit. It was a clash of worlds, ancient honor versus cutting-edge tech. But slowly, a grudging respect grew. Mara and I sparred in the training halls, her style disciplined and precise, mine fueled by instinct and the suit's power. "Your strength is impressive," she admitted after one bout, "but it's your judgment that matters. Power without control is a curse." Her words stuck with me. But alliances built on necessity are brittle. During a joint operation to intercept an Eclipse supply convoy, the fragile trust cracked wide open. We ambushed the convoy in a narrow asteroid belt. The fight was fierce, plasma fire and missile volleys lighting up the dark void. The Eclipse mercenaries were ruthless, but our combined forces pushed them back. Then, as the last Eclipse ship exploded in a fireball, a surprise attack hit from behind. The Covenant forces had withdrawn without warning, leaving our squad exposed. "Why did you pull back?" I demanded over comms, fury burning in my chest. Mara's voice was cold but steady. "Orders from command. We cannot waste resources on a fight we cannot win decisively." I gritted my teeth. "You abandoned us," she replied. "We preserve strength for the war ahead. You should do the same." The fracture was real. The fragile trust shattered. Back at Port Erebus, the fallout was immediate. Valisa confronted me. "If we can't count on the Covenant, what's our plan?" I was silent. The Forge-born legacy was powerful, but it wasn't invincible, and the alliances we built could crumble as easily as they formed. That night, I walked the empty corridors, the hum of the Forge-born suit whispering in my veins. It reminded me of the burden I carried, the power to protect or destroy, the choice I had to make. The legacy was more than armor and weapons. It was a call to leadership, to hold together a fractured galaxy when everyone else seemed bent on tearing it apart. A sudden alert broke the quiet. The ship's AI chimed with urgency. "Incoming transmission. Priority 1. The comms flickered to life, and Mara's face appeared again, less formal, more urgent. "Kai, this is a warning," she said. "The Eclipse is mobilizing a full-scale assault on Port Erebus. They've uncovered a weapon buried in the Forge-born archives, something that could annihilate us all." My jaw clenched. The war had escalated beyond survival. It was a battle for the soul of humanity, and the forces tearing at the galaxy's seams would not stop until everything was broken. I stood at the observation deck, watching the stars flicker cold and distant. The fractured alliances, the ancient legacies, the enemies lurking in shadows. All of it was a storm waiting to break, and I had to be the light that held it back. Because if I failed, there would be nothing left to save. The silence before the storm is a strange thing. You expect it to be peaceful, a calm respite. But in those quiet moments, when the weight of what's coming presses against your chest like a vice, peace feels like a lie. It's the calm before everything breaks. Port Erebus was that calm. The sprawling station hung like a fortress in orbit above a battered, resource-rich planet, one of the last free outposts in this sector. It was a place of sharp edges and harsh truths, a haven for those who refused to bow to the Scythery or the Eclipse. Yet now, as the Raven's wake slipped into the docking bay, the hum of activity felt different, tense, charged. Everyone knew what was coming. Valisa met me on the hangar floor, her face grim. "They're coming, Kai. The Eclipse forces have mobilized more ships than we've ever seen in this quadrant. They mean to crush Port Erebus before we can gather allies." I nodded, the Forge-born suit thrumming softly beneath my armor, an unspoken reminder that the legacy was still with me, alive and pulsing. "We need to prepare every defense, every fighter, every soldier." The station commander, General Oren, was already coordinating the defense grid when we arrived in the command center. His eyes were sharp and tired, the weight of command evident in every line of his weathered face. "We don't have the numbers to repel a full-scale assault," Oren said bluntly. "But with the Forge-born tech on your side, Kai, we might just have a chance." I clenched my fists. It's not just the tech, it's the people. We have to rally them. The next few hours blurred into a frantic surge of preparation. Port Erebus was no stranger to conflict, but this felt different, like standing on the edge of a precipice, knowing the fall could mean the end of everything. I found myself walking the corridors, speaking to soldiers and civilians alike. The Forge-born suit gave me an edge, its presence a symbol of hope and power. But hope alone wouldn't stop a fleet. A group of young recruits caught my eye. They were barely out of their training simulators, faces pale but determined. One of them, a girl named Jessa, looked up at me with wide eyes. "Are you really the one from the stories?" she whispered. I smiled, trying to keep the weight from my voice. "I'm just someone who's going to fight for us all." Her grip tightened on her rifle. "Then we're with you." Back in the command center, the holomap flickered with incoming data, the Eclipse fleet closing in, hundreds of ships bearing down like a black tide. Lasara worked furiously to patch the Forge-born systems into the station's defenses. "They're using advanced stealth tech," she warned. "They'll try to hit us fast and hard before we can respond." The room fell silent except for the soft hum of machines and distant chatter over comms. As night fell over Port Erebus, the stars outside the viewport seemed to hold their breath. Then the assault began. The first wave hit like a thunderclap. Missile volleys lit up the void, plasma beams lancing through the darkness. The station shook under the barrage, alarms wailing in every sector. I strapped into the Raven's Wake's cockpit, the Forge-born suit syncing fully with my neural link. It was time. Fighting in space is a chaotic dance of speed, fire, and survival. Enemy fighters swarmed around me like angry hornets, their movements unpredictable, deadly. But I had something they didn't. The Forge-born suit enhanced my reflexes, feeding me data at lightning speed. I felt connected, not just to the ship, but to every soldier on the station. We were a single organism, moving in unison against the storm. Explosions bloomed in the void, starfire painting the darkness in violent colors. I targeted a squadron of Eclipse bombers advancing on the station's core systems. With a surge of power, the suit channeled energy into my ship's weapons, launching a devastating volley that shredded 2 bombers in seconds. But the battle was far from won. An urgent alert flashed across my HUD. "Warning. Boarding pods detected. Multiple vectors approaching docking bays." Eclipse commandos were coming for Port Erebus, not just to fight, but to take the station from within. I fought my way back to the station's airlocks, rallying the defenders. The corridors erupted into chaos as the boarding parties clashed with our soldiers. Close quarters combat erupted. Blades clashed, plasma pistols fired, and shouts echoed through the metallic halls. In the thick of it, I faced an Eclipse captain, a ruthless woman named Silravex, known for her cruelty and cunning. She sneered as we circled each other, weapons drawn. "You think that suit makes you a god, Forgeborn?" she spat. "I think it makes me a protector," I shot back. The duel was brutal, a clash of skill and will. Her strikes were fast and precise, but the Forgeborn suit's reflex enhancements gave me the edge. I parried, dodged, and countered, feeling the ancient power guiding my every move. Finally, with a swift maneuver, I disarmed her and forced her into surrender. But the victory was hollow. More boarding parties were breaking through every sector, and the station systems were faltering under constant attack. In the command center, Oren's voice crackled over comms. "We're holding for now, but it won't last. We need a miracle." I looked around at the weary faces, soldiers and civilians alike, and felt a surge of determination. "We are the miracle," I said, voice steady despite the chaos. Drawing on the full power of the Forgeborn legacy, I linked deeper into the station's network, channeling energy into the defense grids. The station's turrets flared to life, plasma shields shimmered, and emergency protocols kicked in. Outside, the Eclipse fleet faltered under the sudden counterstrike. But even as we pushed them back, I knew this was just the beginning. Port Erebus had weathered the storm today, but the shadows were gathering, and the war for the soul of the galaxy was far from over. That night, as I stood watch over the station, the weight of leadership pressed heavy on my shoulders. The Forgeborn legacy was not just armor and weapons, it was responsibility. To protect, to unite, and to stand against the darkness no matter the cost. I gazed out at the stars, knowing that the battles ahead would test us all. But I also knew this: as long as there was light, there was hope. The aftermath of the Eclipse assault on Port Erebus was a grim testament to the cost of war. The station bore the scars of battle, blackened walls, shattered consoles, and the quiet hum of emergency power systems filling what used to be bustling corridors. I moved through the wounded and the weary like a ghost, the weight of survival heavy on my shoulders. Despite the devastation, the spirit of Port Erebus was far from broken. Every face I passed bore the same fierce determination that had kept us standing when the Eclipse struck. They were tired, yes, bloodied and shaken, but unbowed. It was in moments like these that I understood what the Forgeborn legacy truly meant. It wasn't just power, it was resilience, the will to stand when everything seemed lost. The council convened in the station's war room, a dimly lit chamber lined with holomaps and tactical displays. Around the table sat the key leaders: General Orin, Lysara, Valisa, Mara Rel from the Starborn Covenant, and several others whose names I had only recently learned but whose resolve was unmistakable. We had survived the first wave, but the eclipse would not relent. General Orin broke the silence, his voice grave. The Eclipse fleet has regrouped. Their next strike will be larger, more coordinated. They're targeting not just Port Erebus but our entire network. Mara's eyes narrowed. Their desperation makes them dangerous. We must strike preemptively. I leaned forward, the hum of the Forge-born suit steady in my veins. Then we take the fight to them. The plan was bold. We would launch a series of coordinated strikes on Eclipse supply lines and command hubs, crippling their ability to wage war before they could mount another assault. The Starborn Covenant warriors trained alongside our forces, blending their disciplined tactics with our guerrilla warfare. The alliance was uneasy but effective, each victory binding us tighter, even as old suspicions lingered. Our first mission was a raid on an Eclipse depot hidden within the asteroid belt near the Kestrel system. The place was heavily guarded, an arsenal of weapons and supplies that fueled the enemy's war machine. We moved fast, striking before the Eclipse could react. I piloted the Raven's Wake into the fray, my suit augmenting every reflex and maneuver. The battle was a blur of laser fire and explosions, our forces slipping through defenses with precision. Inside the depot, I led a squad to secure the central control hub. The corridors were narrow, lit by flickering emergency lights. The air smelled of burning circuitry and tension. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed behind us. Eclipse reinforcements. The fight was brutal in close quarters. Plasma blasts seared the walls. I parried a strike with the forearm shield built into the suit, feeling the impact vibrate through my bones. Amid the chaos, a new threat emerged, an Eclipse commander wielding experimental tech that mimicked the Forge-born suit's abilities. The confrontation was personal, a brutal contest of power and will. I felt the surge of the legacy in my veins, matching his every move with instinct honed over countless battles. In the end, I disarmed him and destroyed the experimental armor, a symbolic victory that echoed through our ranks. The raid was a success, crippling the depot and cutting off a vital supply route. It was a turning point, not just tactically but for morale. The Resistance fighters saw that the Eclipse could be beaten. Back on Port Erebus, the celebrations were muted but genuine. I took a moment alone on the observation deck, staring out at the stars and the endless void beyond. The Forge-born suit pulsed faintly, a reminder that the legacy was not just about strength but the burden of responsibility. Each victory came at a cost, and the war was far from over. Days later, intelligence came through that the Eclipse was assembling a new weapon, a massive dreadnought rumored to wield a planet-cracking cannon. If unleashed, it could obliterate entire systems. The news sent a chill through the command council. "We have to stop it," Belisa said, her voice fierce. "If that weapon goes online, nothing will stand in their way." Mara nodded. "The Covenant has scouts monitoring the construction site. We can't let them finish." I clenched my fists, feeling the weight of what was at stake. The Forge-born legacy was a shield for humanity, but even it might not be enough against such overwhelming firepower. We planned a desperate strike, an all-out assault on the Dreadnought's construction yard. The mission would be dangerous, likely a one-way trip for many of us. But if we failed, the cost would be extinction. The night before the attack, I stood with my closest allies: Valisa, Lysara, Mara, and Orin. "We either win this," I said, voice steady but filled with emotion, "or we lose everything." Their nods were solemn but resolute. The assault was brutal from the moment we dropped out of hyperspace near the target site. The Dreadnought's defenses were formidable, turrets firing plasma bursts, automated drones swarming our ships. I led the charge, diving through a hail of fire to plant charges on the Dreadnought's hull. The Forge-born suit enhanced my movements, making the impossible feel natural, faster, stronger, almost unstoppable. Inside the Dreadnought, the corridors were vast and cold. We moved with precision, every step a fight for survival. Suddenly, alarms blared. Eclipse troops converged on our position. The battle became a desperate fight through steel and fire. At the heart of the Dreadnought, I found the control core, a pulsating mass of energy feeding the weapon's power. With a steady hand, I placed the charges, feeling the ancient legacy guiding me. But just as I triggered the detonation sequence, an Eclipse officer appeared, a remnant of my past encounters. "You think you can destroy what we've built?" he sneered. We clashed, a brutal duel beneath the humming core. The Forgeborn suit's power surged through me, but the officer was cunning and relentless. In the end, I struck the final blow. The core erupted in a blaze of light, shaking the entire dreadnought. We raced to escape as the structure began to collapse. Back aboard the Raven's Wake, watching the dreadnought implode into a fiery ruin, I felt a surge of hope. The tide was turning, but the war was far from over. In the shadows, new threats waited, and the Forgeborn legacy demanded I stay vigilant. For every victory invited a new enemy. The taste of victory is often bitter. We had just shattered the Eclipse dreadnought, their planet-cracking weapon obliterated before it could ever fire a shot. Yet as the explosions faded from the void, I sensed something darker settling in among our ranks. The alliance we'd built, the fragile coalition of human resistance, starborn Covenant warriors, and scattered rebels, was starting to crack. And if those fractures grew, they could tear us apart faster than any Eclipse fleet. Returning to Port Erebus, the station was alive with energy, but not all of it was hope. In the war room, the usual camaraderie felt strained. Mara Rell, the Covenant's commander, was pacing, her expression tight. "The Starborn will not continue fighting alongside those who question our methods," she declared bluntly. I glanced around the room. Lasara's face was pale, Valisa's jaw clenched, and even General Oren looked unsettled. "What methods?" I asked carefully, though I already knew. Mara's voice was cold. "The Resistance's reluctance to embrace total war, to eliminate threats without mercy. The Covenant believes this war cannot be won with half measures." I took a breath, choosing my words. "We fight for survival, not for vengeance. There's a difference." Her eyes flashed. "And that difference will cost us the war." Tensions between the Starborn and our resistance fighters had been simmering beneath the surface since the alliance was formed. Their discipline and ruthless efficiency were impressive and effective, but many of our people feared losing their humanity in the process. I felt the weight of leadership pressing down like never before. The Forgeborn legacy was about strength, but strength without unity was hollow. Later, I walked the corridors of Port Erebus, seeking perspective. In the bustling mess hall, I overheard whispered conversations, soldiers debating the growing divide. One recruit, a young man named Ren, approached me hesitantly. "They say the Covenant wants to control us all," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "That we're being led to a war we don't understand." I put a hand on his shoulder. "War is never simple, Ren, but we fight for freedom." He nodded, but the doubt in his eyes lingered. That night, I met with Valisa and Lasara in the command center, trying to chart a course through the storm. "We need to keep the alliance intact," Valisa said firmly. "Without the Starborn's firepower, we're vulnerable." Lasara nodded. "But we can't let them dictate every move. We have to find common ground." I rubbed my temples. "We need a plan, a mission that reminds everyone why we're here. Something that requires all of us to fight as one." The opportunity came sooner than expected. Intelligence reported a high-value Eclipse target on the nearby mining colony of Drassel 4, a crucial source of rare minerals essential to the Eclipse war effort. Destroying it would cripple their resource chain and send a powerful message. The alliance was still strong. The mission was perilous. Drassel 4 was deep in Eclipse-controlled space, protected by patrols and automated defense arrays. I proposed a joint task force, units from the Covenant and Resistance fighters operating side by side. Mara hesitated but finally agreed, her voice laced with reluctant respect. "We fight together, but no mistakes." We prepared meticulously, blending the guerrilla tactics of the Resistance with the Starborn's precise strikes. As we approached Drassel 4, the tension was palpable. Every pilot, soldier, and engineer knew the stakes. The assault began with a barrage of coordinated strikes. The station's orbit was a storm of plasma fire and missile launches, the Eclipse defenders scrambling to respond. I led a squadron of fighters through a narrow gap in the defenses, weaving between enemy ships with the aid of the Forgeborn suit's enhanced reflexes. Inside the mining colony, the fight was even more brutal. Eclipse troops flooded the tunnels, setting traps and ambushes. I found myself back in the thick of close-quarters combat, plasma bolts sizzling past my head, the sharp clang of energy blades echoing in the cavernous shafts. Amid the chaos, I encountered Mara, fighting alongside her warriors. Her precision and ruthlessness were undeniable. Yet as we cleared a path to the main control hub, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes, a moment where our goals seemed to diverge. At the core of the colony, we planted charges to destroy the mineral processors. As we prepared to exfiltrate, an Eclipse commander, one who had evaded us before, appeared, flanked by reinforcements. The battle was fierce. I felt the Forgeborn suit's power surge, pushing me beyond normal limits. In the heat of combat, Mara took a risk, ordering her warriors to press forward, ignoring the collateral damage that would harm the colony's civilian workers who had been enslaved by the Eclipse. I confronted her. "We fight to free them, not destroy them," I said, breath heavy. She met my gaze. "Sometimes sacrifice is necessary." The clash of ideals was stark, but the mission succeeded. The mineral processors exploded in a fireball that could be seen from orbit. As we escaped, I couldn't shake the feeling that the Alliance was fraying at the edges. Back on Port Erebus, the council meeting was tense. Mara called for stricter enforcement of martial law on allied worlds, measures that would suppress dissent and tighten control. The resistance leaders pushed back, advocating for freedom and self-determination. I found myself in the middle, trying to balance the scales. Later, I stood on the observation deck again, staring at the stars. The Forgeborn legacy pulsed beneath my skin, a reminder that strength was more than brute force. It was wisdom, compassion, and unity. If the Alliance broke apart, we would be vulnerable. I resolved to broker peace, to remind everyone that our true enemy was the Eclipse, not each other. The coming days would test that resolve. The war was far from over, but as long as we stood together, there was hope. The final chapter of this long, brutal conflict was unlike any battle I had faced before. The Eclipse, desperate and furious, had unleashed everything they had against us. Their armada was vast, swarming like a dark cloud over the stars, blotting out entire sectors. Port Erebus was the last bastion. If it fell, humanity and all our allies would be crushed beneath the Eclipse's iron fist. Standing on the bridge of the Raven's Wake, I felt the familiar surge of the Forgeborn legacy coursing through me. It was both a blessing and a curse, immense power tempered by the weight of responsibility. My suit's HUD flickered with incoming data, enemy fleet positions, shields, and weapon statuses. Every system was at maximum alert. "Commander, the Eclipse fleet is forming a blockade." Valise's voice crackled over comms. "They're cutting off reinforcements." I gritted my teeth. "Then we break through." Mara's voice came over the channel, steady and resolute despite the tension. "The Starborn stand with you. This ends now." Our forces gathered in the shadow of the massive Eclipse dreadnought remnants we had destroyed months ago, the scars of that victory still visible from orbit. I took a deep breath, feeling the legacy ignite inside me. "We fight not just for survival," I told the assembled fleet, "but for every world, every life the Eclipse threatens. For our future." The battle began with the deafening roar of plasma cannons and missile salvos lighting up the void. I piloted the Raven's Wake into the heart of the maelstrom, the Forgeborn suit augmenting every reflex and motion. The enemy was relentless. Waves of fighters, massive capital ships, and deadly automated drones swarming in endless numbers. But the Forgeborn legacy was unmatched. My suit responded with fluid precision, deflecting blasts, launching counterattacks, and coordinating with allied squadrons. I felt a strange clarity, a connection not just to my suit, but to every soldier, every pilot fighting alongside me. Amid the chaos, a sudden alert, a massive Eclipse superweapon was powering up, its energy signature spiking. "We have to take it down," I said, eyes narrowing. The Starborn and Resistance fighters divided their efforts, some holding the line, others pushing toward the weapon platform. I led the assault team, breaking through enemy lines with a combination of raw power and tactical finesse. The corridors of the weapon platform were labyrinthine and heavily defended, but the Forgeborn suit amplified my senses, guiding me through. At the core, I faced the Eclipse's final commander, a figure shrouded in dark armor, wielding technology unlike anything I'd seen. Our duel was fierce, a clash of titans amidst the humming core of the weapon. The Forgeborn legacy surged, but so did the Eclipse commander's power. Every strike was a test of endurance, every move a battle of wills. I drew on every lesson learned, every ally lost, every victory won. In a final, desperate move, I channeled the full force of the legacy into a blast that shattered the Eclipse commander's armor and destroyed the weapons core. The explosion rocked the platform, sending shockwaves through the fleet. We had won, but victory came at a cost. The station trembled. Systems began to fail. "We have to evacuate," Valisa shouted. Racing back through the collapsing corridors, I found Mara gravely wounded. "I won't leave you," I said, lifting her into my arms. Her voice was weak but defiant. "You must lead them. The legacy is yours." We escaped just as the station exploded in a blinding light. The fleet regrouped, battered but unbroken. In the aftermath, the Eclipse remnants scattered, their grip shattered. Peace talks began, tentative but hopeful. Standing before the Allied Council, I spoke not just as a commander, but as a symbol of what humanity and its allies had endured and become. "The Forgeborn legacy is more than power," I said. "It is hope, unity, and the will to protect what is right. Together, we forged a future from the stars." As the new dawn spread across the galaxy, I looked to the stars, not as a battleground, but as a legacy to be preserved. The war was over, but the story of humanity's rise among the stars was just beginning.